The day I discovered my husband had stolen my annual bonus was the same day I learned he'd been having an affair with my cousin. I stood in our kitchen, staring at the bank statement, my hands trembling as the numbers blurred before my eyes. $15,000 gone, transferred to an account I didn't recognize. Just 3 days after the deposit hit, I couldn't breathe. 20 years of marriage, and I'd never once checked James' phone. We had trust, or so I thought. But something about the missing money made my stomach twist with a certainty I couldn't ignore. I picked up his unlocked phone from the counter where he'd left it while showering, my fingers moving before my conscience could object. The text messages made me sink to the floor, my back against the refrigerator, our family photos mocking me from their magnetic frames. "Can't wait to see your face when you see the surprise," he'd written to Melissa. My cousin, the woman who'd been my bridesmaid. "The necklace cost a fortune, but you're worth every penny." I closed my eyes, remembering the bonus I'd worked 60-hour weeks for months to earn. The promotion I'd finally received after being overlooked twice. The money I'd planned to use for our daughter's college fund. All of it taken without a word, to buy jewelry for my cousin. The shower upstairs stopped running. I had maybe 5 minutes before James came downstairs, hair still damp, smelling of the expensive cologne I'd bought him for Christmas. 5 minutes to decide whether to confront him now or wait until I had a plan. What James didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that I'd already spoken to HR that morning. I'd called Margaret in payroll about the tax, withholding on my bonus. What she told me changed everything. "That's strange," she'd said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Your husband called 2 weeks ago asking when the bonuses would be paid. He said you'd asked him to check because you were in meetings all day. I probably shouldn't have told him, but I figured since you've been here 15 years. The pieces clicked into place like a nightmare jigsaw. James had been planning this, watching for my bonus, waiting to take it before I even noticed it was there. I heard his footsteps on the stairs as I quickly put his phone back exactly where he'd left it. I stood up, folded the bank statement, and slipped it into my pocket. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, but outwardly I was calm. "Morning, babe," he said, coming into the kitchen and dropping a kiss on my cheek like he hadn't just stolen from me, like he wasn't betraying me in the worst possible way. "You're up early for a Saturday." I smiled, amazed at how easily the expression came to my face. "Just getting a head start," I said, pouring coffee into his favorite mug, the one with "World's Best Husband" printed on it that our daughter had given him for Father's Day years ago. Big day today. He had no idea how big. James took the mug, his face a mask of perfect innocence. "Any plans for the weekend?" he asked, leaning against the counter. "I might need to run some errands later." I bet you do, I thought, but said only nothing special. Though I was thinking about our finances this morning. A flicker of something, concern? Guilt crossed his face. What about them? Just wondering if we should adjust our budget now that I've got the promotion. I kept my voice casual, stirring cream into my own coffee. That bonus will make a big difference to our savings. He took a sip of coffee, eyes not quite meeting mine. "Yeah, about that. Let's not count on that money right away. I was thinking we might use it for a family vacation this summer. You've been working so hard." The audacity nearly made me laugh. He was laying groundwork to explain the missing money he'd already spent on another woman. "My cousin." "That's thoughtful," I said, the words like ash in my mouth. But I had some ideas for the money too. Maybe we should check the account and discuss options. His hand tightened almost imperceptibly around the mug. "No need to rush," he said quickly. "Let's enjoy the weekend first. I was thinking of taking you out to dinner tonight. That new place downtown you mentioned." A distraction, a guilt offering. I wondered if he'd take Melissa to the same restaurant next week, spending more of my money. "Sounds lovely," I lied, wondering how I'd sit across from him for an entire meal without screaming the truth in his face. James finished his coffee and put the mug in the sink. I should get going on those errands, he said, already edging toward the door. Need anything while I'm out? Just answers, I wanted to say. Instead, I shook my head. I'm good. As soon as his car pulled out of the driveway, I called my best friend Carol. We'd met during my first week at Jenkins and Associates, both of us starting as junior associates in the marketing department. 15 years later, she was the only person I trusted completely. He did what? Carol's voice exploded through the phone when I told her. With your cousin? And he stole your bonus. All 15,000, I confirmed, my voice steadier than I felt. I've already called the bank, but since we have a joint account and he's my husband, there's nothing they can do. It's not technically theft in their eyes. It's theft in every way that matters, Carol said, her outrage on my behalf warming something cold inside me. What are you going to do? I took a deep breath. I don't know yet, but I need to be smart about this. If I confront him now, he'll just lie. I need evidence, and I need to protect myself financially before he realizes I know. You're coming over, Carol said firmly. Right now. Bring your laptop and any financial documents you have. My brother's a divorce attorney, remember? I'm calling him too. 3 hours later, I sat at Carol's dining room table surrounded by papers, her brother Michael pointing out items on a legal pad where he'd been taking notes. The good news, Michael said, is that we have documentation of the transfer. The bad news is that in this state, proving the money was used for an affair can be complicated. But he held up a finger. The fact that the bonus was directly tied to your work performance gives us leverage. I don't just want leverage, I said, surprising myself with the hardness in my voice. I want consequences. Carol and Michael exchanged glances. Sarah, Carol said gently, I know you're hurting. This isn't about hurt, I interrupted. This is about justice, about respect. He didn't just betray our marriage. He stole my work, my achievement, my reward. And he gave it to my cousin. Michael nodded slowly. I understand. And legally we'll fight for every penny. But you should prepare yourself for a difficult process. What neither of them knew was that I had already begun preparing. After talking to Margaret in payroll, I'd made another call to Nancy Chin, the head of HR at Jenkins and Associates. I need to change my direct deposit information immediately, I told her. And I need to discuss some concerns about information security. Nancy had been alarmed when I explained that my husband had impersonated me to get information about my compensation. Corporate espionage wasn't unheard of in our industry, and Jenkins took such breaches seriously. This is deeply concerning, Sarah, Nancy had said. We'll need to document this incident formally, and I strongly recommend you speak with Dennis. Dennis Howard was the company's legal counsel. By Monday morning, I had a new bank account at a different bank, paperwork for a consultation with a divorce attorney, and a meeting scheduled with both HR and legal at Jenkins and Associates. But first, I had to get through the weekend with James without giving anything away. He returned from his errands late that afternoon, carrying shopping bags and wearing the same artificially bright smile I'd seen on his face for weeks, a smile I now recognized as guilt. Got you something, he said, pulling out a small box from one of the bags. Inside was a silver bracelet, pretty but nothing special, nothing that would cost $15,000. I wondered if Melissa's necklace was diamond or sapphire. My cousin had always mentioned loving sapphires. It's beautiful, I said, slipping it on my wrist and forcing a smile. What's the occasion? Do I need an occasion to treat my wife? He asked, looking pleased with himself. I just thought, with your promotion and everything, you deserve something nice. Something nice. Bought with what was left of my bonus money after he'd spent most of it on his mistress. My stomach turned, but I kept the smile fixed on my face. Thank you, I said. It's perfect. That night at dinner, I watched him order the most expensive wine on the menu, insisting we should celebrate my success. I wondered if he heard the irony in his words. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing, while he talked about an upcoming golf tournament and asked perfunctory questions about my promotion. "So what exactly does this new position entail?" he asked, refilling his wine glass. In 15 years, he'd never once asked for details about my work. I'd tried to tell him in the beginning, excited about marketing strategies and campaign metrics, but his eyes would glaze over. Eventually, I stopped trying. Now, suddenly he was interested. "It's a senior brand director position," I said carefully. "More responsibility, bigger budget to manage. And the annual bonus structure changes significantly." His eyes sharpened at the mention of bonuses. "Oh, better than before?" "Potentially," I said, watching him calculate in his head. "Depends on performance metrics." He reached across the table to take my hand, his touch making my skin crawl for the first time in our marriage. "I'm proud of you, babe. You've worked hard for this." Yes, I had. And he had stolen the fruits of that work. Back home, I pleaded a headache to avoid his touch. He didn't push, seeming almost relieved. I lay awake beside him, listening to his breathing even out into sleep, wondering how long the affair had been going on, wondering if our entire marriage had been a lie. Sunday passed in a blur of mundane tasks and careful conversations. I did laundry, cleaned the kitchen, smiled when appropriate, all while taking stock of our home, mentally cataloging what mattered to me and what I could leave behind. Our daughter, Emily, called from college that evening. At 20, she was busy with her sophomore year, studying environmental science and hardly having time to check in. James put her on speakerphone, playing the role of devoted father. "How's my favorite girl?" he asked, and I wondered if he used the same endearment with Melissa. I watched his face as Emily chattered about classes and campus activities, searching for any sign that he felt shamed for betraying her too, because he had. Every lie to me was a lie to our daughter as well, but I saw nothing except the practiced affection he'd always shown her. When Monday morning finally arrived, I felt strangely calm. I dressed carefully in my most professional outfit, a charcoal gray suit that made me look authoritative but not flashy. At the last minute, I took off the silver bracelet James had given me. I couldn't bear to wear it. "Big meetings today?" James asked over breakfast, noticing the suit. "Just the usual Monday," I said, gathering my things. "I might be late tonight, though. Dinner with the team possible." "No problem," he said easily. "I might grab drinks with Dave anyway." Dave was his alibi, I realized. His friend from the golf club, who probably covered for him when he was with Melissa. I wondered if Dave's wife knew, if she was as oblivious as I had been. "Have fun," I said, and kissed him goodbye as I had for 20 years, the gesture now empty of all meaning. At work, I moved through the morning in a daze, responding to emails and attending a department meeting while the hours ticked down to my appointment with HR and legal. At 11 o'clock, I took the elevator to the executive floor, where Nancy Chun greeted me with a concerned smile. "Sarah, come in. Dennis is already here." Dennis Howard, a dignified man in his 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes, stood as I entered Nancy's office. "Mrs. Bennett," he said, shaking my hand. "I understand you have a serious matter to discuss." "Yes," I said, taking the seat Nancy offered. "And I appreciate your time. This isn't easy for me." I laid out the facts clinically. My husband's call to payroll impersonating me, the transfer of my entire bonus within days of deposit, the discovery of the affair. With each sentence, Dennis's expression grew more serious. "This is concerning on multiple levels," he said when I finished. "Not just personally for you, which I deeply regret, but also from a company security perspective." Nancy nodded. "We've already changed protocols and payroll as a result, but we want to make sure you're protected as well." Dennis tapped his pen against a legal pad. "The company has a fiduciary duty to ensure your compensation is protected. This situation, your husband's impersonation to gain information about your bonus, potentially violates several policies and possibly laws." My heart beat faster. What are you suggesting? I believe Jenkins and Associates would be willing to take an unusual step in this situation, Dennis said carefully. With your permission, we could retrieve the bonus funds and reissue them directly to your new account. I stared at him. You can do that. Nancy and Dennis exchanged glances. Technically, Dennis explained, the company could void the original deposit citing fraudulent circumstances and reissue the payment. Since we have documentation that your husband impersonated you to acquire information about the payment timing, we have grounds to consider the funds misappropriated. For the first time since discovering James's betrayal, I felt something like hope. Would that alert him? That I know. Not necessarily, Dennis said. The communication would come from Jenkins, citing a technical error in payment processing. Nothing about fraud or your knowledge would be disclosed. I took a deep breath. And this wouldn't put my job at risk? I don't want to create problems for the company. On the contrary, Nancy said firmly, you're a valued senior employee who was targeted. The company has every interest in protecting you and rectifying this situation. By the time I left the meeting, a plan was in place. Jenkins would reclaim the bonus through legal channels, reissue it to my new private account, and formally document the security breach caused by James's impersonation, documentation that would later prove invaluable in divorce proceedings. I walked back to my office feeling lighter than I had in days. James had stolen from me, betrayed me in the worst possible way. But I wasn't helpless. I wasn't alone, and he had no idea what was coming. 2 days later, the email arrived in James's inbox. I knew because I was monitoring his emails. After discovering his betrayal, I'd installed monitoring software on our home computer, something I'd never have considered before, but betrayal changes you. The message from Jenkins and Associates was formal and apologetic. Due to a processing error in our accounting system, the recent performance bonus was incorrectly deposited. The funds have been recalled and will be reissued within 3 to 5 business days. We sincerely apologize for any inconvenience. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when I heard James's shout from his home office. What the hell? His footsteps pounded down the hallway. Sarah, did you see this email from your company? I turned from the cutting board, knife still in hand, my expression carefully neutral. What email? He thrust his phone at me, his face flushed with anger. They're taking back your bonus. Some bullshit about a processing error. You need to call them right now and fix this. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and took the phone, pretending to read the message I'd helped craft. That's strange, I said, frowning slightly. I'm sure it's just a technical issue. I'll call HR tomorrow. Tomorrow? They're taking $15,000 and you'll call tomorrow? His voice rose, panic edging in. Call them now. Their accounting department should still be open. I handed the phone back to him. James, it's after 6. No one will be there. And if it's a system error like they said, the regular staff can't fix it anyway. I'll handle it first thing tomorrow. He ran a hand through his hair, visibly agitated. This is unacceptable. That money is already... He stopped abruptly. Already what? I asked quietly. He looked away. Already in our account. We were counting on it for expenses. Were we? I turned back to the vegetables I'd been chopping. I don't remember discussing any specific plans for that money, except perhaps a family vacation this summer. Right. Yes. The vacation. He was backpedaling now, trying to cover. And some home repairs. You know the roof needs work. The roof was perfectly fine. We'd replaced it 3 years ago. Funny, I said, sliding the chopped carrots into a bowl. I don't remember you mentioning roof repairs before. James shifted uncomfortably. Well, I noticed some issues last week. Thought I'd handle it. How thoughtful of you. I reached for an onion, beginning to peel it. But don't worry about the bonus. I'm sure they'll reissue it soon. What I didn't tell him was that Jenkins had already reissued the payment to my new private account. $15,000, safe from his grasp. He hovered in the kitchen doorway, watching me with mounting suspicion. You don't seem very concerned about this. I shrugged, focused on dicing the onion. Getting upset won't change anything. I'll sort it out tomorrow. That night, James was restless beside me, checking his phone repeatedly. I pretended to sleep while watching him through nearly closed eyes. At 2 a.m., he slipped out of bed and went downstairs. I waited 5 minutes, then followed silently. He was in the home office, hunched over the computer, frantically checking bank statements. I stood in the shadow of the hallway, watching as he logged into online banking accounts I didn't know existed. Accounts where I assumed he'd hidden the money he'd stolen from me, and perhaps other funds as well. I retreated before he could notice me, filing away this new information. The next morning, I left early for work, telling him I wanted to address the bonus issue first thing. At the office, I met again with Nancy and Dennis. The plan was proceeding exactly as we'd hoped. Jenkins had successfully recalled the funds, citing accounting irregularities. The paperwork documenting James's impersonation was ready for me to sign, evidence that would prove invaluable in divorce proceedings. How are you holding up, Sarah? Nancy asked gently after we'd finished the official business. I straightened the papers in front of me. I'm taking it one day at a time, but I'm better than I was a week ago. Your composure is remarkable, Dennis commented. Most people would be falling apart under these circumstances. I thought about that as I drove to my next appointment with Michael, Carol's brother, who had agreed to take my case. Maybe I should be falling apart. Maybe it wasn't normal to feel this calm, this focused. But the truth was, beneath the hurt and betrayal, I felt something else, relief. Relief that I discovered the truth before James could do more damage. Relief that I wouldn't spend the next 20 years with a man who could steal from me and lie to my face. Michael's office was in a converted Victorian house downtown, the kind of place that looked warm and inviting rather than coldly legal. Carol was waiting for me in the lobby. How did it go with HR? She asked, hugging me tightly. Better than I expected. They've already recovered the bonus and reissued it to my new account. Carol pulled back, eyes wide. Seriously? Your company can do that? Apparently, when an employee's spouse commits fraud to get information about compensation, companies take it seriously. I managed a small smile. James got an email yesterday saying the funds were recalled due to a processing error. Oh, to have been a fly on the wall for that moment, Carol said, a gleam of satisfaction in her eyes. I had a front row seat, I told her. He was upset. Michael welcomed us into his office, a space lined with bookshelves and furnished with comfortable leather chairs rather than imposing desks. Sarah, he said, gesturing me to a seat. I've reviewed everything you sent over. I think we have a strong case for divorce based on infidelity and financial misconduct. The documentation from your employer about the impersonation is particularly valuable. I nodded, feeling a sudden tightness in my throat. So, what happens next? That depends, Michael said, leaning forward. How do you want to approach this? We can go the confrontational route, file for divorce immediately, get a temporary restraining order to freeze assets, and bring the infidelity evidence into the open. Or we can be more strategic, quietly build our case while you secure your finances and prepare for separation. I thought about James's late-night exploration of secret bank accounts, about his lies regarding the missing bonus, about the bracelet he'd given me, a cheap consolation prize while my cousin received the real gift. I want to be strategic, I said firmly. I don't want a long, ugly court battle. I want a clean break, fair division of assets, and for him to face consequences for what he's done. Michael nodded approvingly. Then let's focus on documenting everything and securing your position before he realizes what's happening. I suggest you continue as normal at home for another week or two while we prepare the filing. Another week or two of lies. of pretending I didn't know about Melissa, of watching James check his phone for messages from her, of enduring his touch without recoiling. "I can do that," I said, though the prospect made my stomach churn. For the next 10 days, I lived a double life. At work, I was methodically preparing for divorce, transferring my portion of our joint savings to my new account, gathering documents, meeting with lawyers. At home, I was the same Sarah I'd always been, cooking dinner, asking about James's day, maintaining the facade of our marriage. James grew increasingly agitated as the days passed with no sign of the reissued bonus. He called Jenkins and Associates himself, only to be told by an apologetic receptionist that due to privacy policies, they could only discuss employee compensation with the employee directly. "Your company is giving me the runaround," he complained that evening. "Did you talk to them? When are they fixing this?" "I spoke with HR," I said calmly. "They assured me they're addressing the issue. These things take time. We need that money, Sarah." A note of desperation had crept into his voice. I wondered if Melissa was pressuring him about the promised necklace. "It's just a bonus," I said, meeting his eyes. "Not like it's our life savings." He looked away first. "It's still our money." "No," I thought. "It's my money. Money I earned working 60-hour weeks for months. Money you stole to buy jewelry for my cousin." On Friday night, James announced he had a client dinner and wouldn't be home until late. I knew what that meant now. He was meeting Melissa. After he left, I called Emily at college. I hadn't told our daughter anything yet, wanting to protect her until I had a plan. But soon, she would need to know the truth. "Hey, Mom," she answered, the sounds of campus life buzzing in the background. "What's up?" "Just checking in," I said, settling onto the couch. "How's the environmental science project going?" "It's amazing." Her enthusiasm was contagious, even through my preoccupied haze. "Professor Winters thinks we might be able to publish our findings in an undergraduate journal." "How cool is that?" "That's incredible, Em. I'm so proud of you." We chatted for 20 minutes about her classes, her roommate drama, the campus activism she was involved in. I soaked in every detail, grateful for this uncomplicated love in my life. "How's Dad?" she asked eventually. "And home? Everything good?" I hesitated, not ready to burden her. "Dad's fine. Everything here is in transition." "Good transitions," I added quickly. "My promotion is bringing some changes." "That's awesome, Mom. You deserve it. Hey, when's your birthday dinner happening?" Dad mentioned he was planning something special this year. My birthday, next Saturday. I had completely forgotten in the chaos of the past 2 weeks. "Did he?" I said, keeping my voice neutral. "He hasn't mentioned anything to me." "Oops," Emily laughed. "Maybe it's a surprise." "Forget I said anything." After we hung up, I sat in the darkened living room, thinking about birthdays past. Last year, James had forgotten entirely until Emily called to wish me happy birthday. The year before, he'd given me a kitchen appliance I'd never asked for. And now, he was supposedly planning something special. I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app for our joint account. There it was, a reservation payment to Riverside, the most expensive restaurant in town. For Saturday night, my birthday, a plan began to form in my mind. One that would give James exactly the kind of surprise he deserved. I texted Carol, change of plans. I'm confronting him on my birthday. Time to end this. Her reply came immediately, "I'm there. Whatever you need." The next morning, I made an appointment at my favorite salon for the following Saturday. New haircut, new color, a physical transformation to match the internal one I'd undergone in the past 2 weeks. When James returned from his client dinner at midnight, reeking of unfamiliar perfume, I pretended to be asleep. Let him think I suspected nothing. Let him believe his birthday surprise, whatever it was, would proceed as planned. Throughout the week, I finalized preparations with Michael. The divorce papers would be ready Friday. Carol arranged to take the day off work Saturday to be my support. And then, on Tuesday, the unexpected happened. Melissa called me. I stared at my phone in disbelief when her name appeared on the screen. My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity won out. "Hello, Melissa," I said coldly. "Sarah." Her voice was small, tentative. I need to talk to you. I can't imagine what we have to talk about." "Please," she said, and I was surprised to hear what sounded like genuine distress. "It's important. Can we meet?" Against my better judgment, I agreed to coffee that afternoon. I chose a cafe far from my office, far from anywhere James might unexpectedly appear. Melissa was already there when I arrived, huddled in a corner booth, looking nothing like the confident, laughing woman I remembered from family gatherings. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her normally immaculate makeup absent. "Thank you for coming," she said as I slid into the seat across from her. "I'm here," I said flatly. "Talk." She took a shaky breath. "I don't know how to say this. I've been seeing James." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that made heads turn at nearby tables. "I know, Melissa. I know about the affair. I know about the necklace he bought you with my bonus money. I know everything." Her face crumpled. "Oh God, I'm so sorry, Sarah. I never meant." "Save it," I cut her off. "I'm not interested in your apologies." "You don't understand," she insisted, leaning forward. "He's been lying to me too. He told me you were separated, that you were divorcing, that you'd agreed he could keep the money from selling your vacation property." "We didn't have a vacation property." I stared at her. "What are you talking about?" "Last year," she said, "he told me you decided to sell that lakeside property your parents left you. Said you'd agreed he could have the proceeds to invest in his business. My parents' lakeside cabin, the one I'd inherited when they died. The one James had insisted we keep for sentimental reasons when I'd considered selling it 3 years ago. We never sold that property," I said slowly. "It's still in my name." Melissa's eyes widened, but he showed me papers, a sales agreement, said it sold for almost $200,000. The room seemed to tilt. $200,000, on top of my stolen bonus, on top of whatever other money he'd been hiding in those secret accounts. When did this supposedly happen? I asked, my voice unnaturally calm. "Last summer. July, I think." She was watching my face carefully. "He's been lying to both of us, hasn't he?" "Yes," I said simply. "He has." She pushed a folder across the table. "These are copies of everything he gave me. The sales documents for the cabin, bank statements showing the transfers, emails about investment opportunities for the money." I opened the folder with trembling hands. There it was, a forged sales agreement for my parents' cabin, complete with what appeared to be my signature, bank statements showing transfers to accounts I'd never heard of, email correspondence about investment opportunities that didn't exist. "Why are you showing me this now?" I asked, closing the folder. Melissa looked down at her hands. "Because he asked me to marry him. Said once your divorce was final, we could be together. That he'd buy me a house with the investment returns." I almost laughed again. "And you believed him?" I did," she admitted, "until last week when I overheard him on the phone with someone named Amber, talking about their future together, about the house he'd promised her." Amber. I didn't know anyone named Amber. Apparently, neither James nor Melissa were exclusive in their betrayals. "So you're not here out of guilt," I observed. "You're here because you found out you're not the only one." She flushed. "I'm here because you deserve to know the truth. About the cabin, about the money, about all of it." I studied her face, searching for sincerity. Whatever her motives, she just handed me exactly what I needed. Evidence of financial fraud on a much larger scale than I'd initially discovered. "Thank you for this," I said, finally tapping the folder. "I'll need to keep these." She nodded. "I made copies. Do you hate me?" The question caught me off guard. Did I hate her? Yes, for the betrayal. But in this moment, looking at her tear-stained face, I felt something else, pity. James had used and manipulated her just as he had me. I'm not wasting any more energy on either of you, I said, rising from the table. I suggest you do the same. Back at the office, I called Michael immediately, then forwarded him scans of everything Melissa had given me. His response was immediate and decisive. We needed to act faster than planned. This changes things, Sarah, he said gravely. This is criminal fraud. We need to secure your assets immediately and consider involving the police. By Wednesday afternoon, we had a court order freezing all joint assets. By Thursday, I had confirmation that my parents' cabin was still legally mine. James had never actually sold it, just forged documents to make Melissa believe he had. The money he'd shown her had likely come from other sources, perhaps other scams, perhaps our joint savings. We couldn't be sure yet. I didn't go home Thursday night. Instead, I packed a bag and checked into a hotel. I texted James that I was working late on a major project and would be staying near the office. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji, probably relieved to have the house to himself, to call Melissa or Amber or whoever else was in his rotation of lies. Friday morning, I filed for divorce on grounds of adultery and financial misconduct. By afternoon, James had been served with papers at his office. By evening, my phone was exploding with missed calls and increasingly desperate texts from him. What is this? Call me right now. This is all a misunderstanding, Sarah, please. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I went to my hair appointment, emerging 2 hours later with a shorter, brighter style that made me look younger, more confident, ready for the next chapter. Saturday, my birthday, dawned clear and bright. I checked my phone to find 17 more missed calls from James and a voicemail that alternated between pleading and threatening legal action of his own. I deleted it halfway through. I spent the morning with Carol, finalizing our plan for the evening. Michael had advised against the confrontation I wanted, suggesting instead that all communication go through lawyers. But this was my birthday, my life, my closure to claim. Are you sure about this? Carol asked as we went over the details one more time. We could just let the lawyers handle everything. I'm sure, I said. I need to do this. For me. At 7 that evening, I pulled into the parking lot of Riverside Restaurant in Carol's car, not the one James would recognize. Through the windows, I could see him already seated at a table for two, checking his watch, his back to the entrance. I smoothed down the new dress I'd bought that afternoon, tailored black with subtle gold accents. Professional, but striking. The woman in the mirror was not the same one who had stood in her kitchen 2 weeks ago, staring at a bank statement in shock. Carol squeezed my hand. Ready? I nodded. Wait 2 minutes, then follow. The maitre d' smiled as I approached. Good evening, madam. Do you have a reservation? I'm meeting someone, I said, nodding toward James. My husband. As I approached the table, James glanced up, then did a double take, clearly thrown by my new appearance. Sarah? What? Your hair? He stood awkwardly, leaning in for a kiss that I sidestepped. I've been trying to call you. Where have you been? Busy, I said, taking the seat across from him. Very busy. He looked nervous, eyes darting around the restaurant. Listen, about those papers, there's been a huge misunderstanding. I can explain everything. I'm sure you can, I said calmly. You've always been good at explaining things, James. At making up stories. His expression hardened slightly. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know about Melissa, I said, watching his face pale. And about the bonus you stole. And about the cabin you pretended to sell. And I'm wondering if I'll ever know about all of it. All the lies, all the women, all the money. Sarah, he hissed, leaning forward. This isn't the place. It's exactly the place, I cut him off. You chose it, after all. For my birthday surprise. On cue, Carol appeared beside our table, followed by the maitre d', wheeling a small cart with a covered dish. Your special order, sir, the maitre d' announced. James stared in confusion. I didn't order anything special. The birthday arrangement, the man insisted. You were most specific. Before James could object further, the man lifted the cover with a flourish, revealing not food but a folder identical to the one Melissa had given me, emblazoned with the logo of Michael's law firm. What is this? James demanded. This, I said, opening the folder, is everything, James. Bank statements for accounts you thought I didn't know about. Forged documents for my parents' cabin. Text messages between you and Melissa, and a few between you and someone named Amber that Melissa was kind enough to forward. The blood drained from his face. You talked to Melissa? She came to me. I corrected him. Seems she didn't appreciate discovering she wasn't the only other woman. James reached for the folder, but Carol smoothly moved it out of his reach. And this, I continued, pulling a second envelope from my purse, is notification that Jenkins and Associates is pursuing civil charges against you for fraudulently obtaining confidential employee information. They take their security protocols very seriously. His eyes darted between me, Carol, and the maitre d', who was now politely withdrawing from what was clearly a personal situation. You can't do this, James said, voice cracking. We can work this out, Sarah. We have 20 years together. Had, I corrected. We had 20 years. And you threw them away for… what? A necklace for my cousin? Secret accounts? A woman named Amber. It's not what you think, he began, but I held up a hand. Save it for your lawyer. Mine already has everything he needs. I stood, smoothing my dress. Oh, and the cabin? Still mine. Always was. The money you claimed came from selling it? I'll be very interested to learn where that actually came from during discovery. James looked up at me, his face a mask of shock and fear. In that moment, I felt nothing for him. Not hate, not love, not even anger anymore. Just a profound weariness and relief that I was walking away. Happy birthday to me, I said quietly, turning to leave. Wait, he called after me. Sarah, please. I love you. I paused, looking back at him one last time. No, James. You loved what I provided. Stability, respectability, a cover for whatever you've really been doing all these years. But that's over now. Carol and I walked out of the restaurant together, stepping into the cool evening air. For the first time in weeks, I took a deep breath that didn't hurt. Are you okay? Carol asked, linking her arm through mine. I thought about the question, about the marriage I'd lost, about the money that had been stolen, about the betrayal by both my husband and my cousin. But I also thought about the strength I'd found, the clarity that had come from seeing the truth at last, the future that was now entirely mine to shape. Yes, I said, surprised to find I meant it. I'm more than okay. I'm free. 3 months later, I stood on the dock of my parents' lakeside cabin, watching the sunset reflect off the water. The divorce was finalized faster than expected once James realized the extent of evidence against him. Jenkins and Associates had pursued their case successfully, resulting in significant penalties. My bonus, my savings, and my property remained mine. Emily had struggled with the news at first, but had come to understand as the evidence of her father's deceptions mounted. She was here with me now for a weekend away from campus, both of us healing in the peace of the place my parents had loved. Mom. She came to stand beside me, wrapping a blanket around both our shoulders against the evening chill. I'm proud of you. You know that, right? I put my arm around her, pulling her close. Thank you, sweetheart. That means everything. When you told me what happened, she said carefully, I was so angry. At Dad, at Melissa. But mostly I was amazed by you. How you handled it. How you didn't fall apart. I smiled, watching the last rays of sun disappear behind the distant hills. I did fall apart, Em. Just not where anyone could see. And then I put myself back together, stronger than before. Like kintsugi, she said. That Japanese art where they repair broken pottery with gold, making the breaks part of the beauty. I looked at my daughter, so wise, so compassionate, so much her own person. The best thing to come from those 20 years with James. Exactly like that, I agreed. The breaks are part of who I am now, but they're not the whole story. As night fell over the lake, I thought about the path ahead, the promotion I was thriving in, the new friends I'd made, the old ones who'd stood by me. The future stretched before me, uncertain but full of possibility. I had been broken, yes, but here I was, pieced back together with something like gold in the cracks, showing my daughter that a woman's story doesn't end with betrayal, that sometimes it's just beginning.